Ranking part two, the other half of the league. At number 16, I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the Colts, I think this year, it's easy to say, oh, everything depends on the quarterback. I expect Anthony Richardson to be very good. I think he was my highest graded quarterback when that draft class came out. So I expect big things from Richardson. And you put him in an offense of Shane Steichen that was able to help Jalen Hurts just explode onto the scene. So I could see a very similar type of situation where they're going to be running a lot of read option, RPOs, but also try to maximize Anthony Richardson's talents as a runner and as a deep ball thrower. So I expect Richardson to have a big year and this offense in general to have a huge year. The receiving core is still, it's nothing crazy. They don't have the star power, but they're deep and they have quality players in Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, the newly drafted Adonai Mitchell, Josh Downs. And at tight end, they got Mo Alley Cox, who's all right, gets the job done. So the receiving core is definitely good enough. Defensively, they still got DeForest Buckner, an elite defensive line. They drafted Latu, probably the best defensive lineman in the draft. So you expect the defensive line to be a huge standpoint for this team. The secondary, I'm sure they'll figure it out. It has a lot of moving pieces, a lot of young guys in that. But, out of so many young guys, one or two of them has to spark out and, just grow out and become good. So I have faith in the team is really good, but honestly, it comes down to the coaching staff and Shane Steichen being able to have Gardner Minshew and still be in the playoff hunt with a bunch of injuries that they had last year. So I'm big on the Colts, and I think really they have a really high ceiling, and I don't want to say a low floor, but I would say average is their floor, right about here. 15 spot, probably the team that fell the most from last season to this season, and that's the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, the biggest major loss is their wide receiver one in Stephon Diggs, and that's the biggest question with this team, at least offensively, because, you got to see if Keon Coleman can step up, if Khalil Shakir can step up, and, if Josh Allen is one of those elite guys like a Mahomes or a Lamar where, it doesn't really matter who you put around him, but he's going to elevate the receiver. So, it'll be interesting to see if Josh Allen can do that and elevate receivers. I have trust in him. Josh Allen's no bum. Like, his interception numbers are high, but I have faith in him to lift up this offense and become a one-man army as he has been of recent years. The offensive line should still be solid, should still be at least above average. Defensively, they did lose a lot of people. They lost both their safeties and Tre'Davious White. And while all three of them were getting older and more injury-riddled in Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, and Tre'Davious White, it's still three quality stars that they have to replace and three quality stars that they're depending on young guys and rookies, second years to, match in quality. So I could see the secondary being a huge issue for the Bills this season. Pass rush-wise, they're still going to be pretty good. They have Matt Milano, one of the elite linebackers in the league. Gregory Rousseau, who's a great edge rusher and a very good edge one for a team. But I think another thing for the Bills is they play in a very tough division. They play in the division with the Dolphins and the Jets, so that those aren't the freebie games that they usually are. So I could definitely see them losing a couple in division games. But overall, I could see the Bills, aside from Stephon Diggs, I would say the biggest issues and questions for the Bills is going to be their secondary, because I have faith in Josh Allen to elevate the receiving core and the overall passing game of the offense. So it'll be interesting to see how that, goes. Dalton Kincaid. That's why they drafted Kincaid, really, because Kincaid, they can split him out wide and kind of replace that Diggs-esque production. And McDermott, clock's ticking on him. I wouldn't say he's on the hot seat, but, if they miss the playoffs entirely, I would consider next year to be a hot seat. So, we'll see if McDermott can really, pull through himself as, an upper echelon coach that we thought he was a couple years ago. But honestly, the Bills, I could see them making the divisional round. I would say that's their ceiling. But Josh Allen's going to have to be Josh Allen and elevate others around him again. I'm going to put the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Browns are an interesting team because their thing comes down to one person or one room, and that is Deshaun Watson in the quarterback room, because outside of him, this team has everything. From an elite offensive line with two all-pro guards and quality tackles. They have a good receiving core. They brought in Jerry Jeudy on top of Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore. So they have good receivers in that aspect. And the run game, although Nick Chubb is not going to be available, and it's to be determined how he's going to come back from a big injury like that. Jerome Ford is still pretty good. Pierre Strong is a solid RB3. So offensively, the Browns are going to be set. They can run the ball as good as any team in the league. It just comes down to Deshaun Watson, and can he be good? Because he was awful. He was damn near unplayable. And when he went out and Joe Flacco went in, this team, did they light the league on fire? No, but they became at least an average offense on top of the defense, giving them takeaways and short fields. It made them look a lot better. So that's why it's so hard to understand why Watson was struggling, because you have everything going for you. You have a good offensive play caller in Stefanski. You have a great offensive line that you don't have to worry about like getting killed. The running game and the receivers are good. It's just Watson. It might have been that year off of football. It might be a confidence thing. But he looks so shaken right now. He looks done for, like mentally being scared and all that. It really just comes down to, can he be good at all and worth anything close to the amount of money they paid him. Defensively, Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith, an elite defensive duo. You're going to have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, so they don't have to worry about a pass rush. It makes things a lot easier knowing that you can just drop back 7 every play pretty much, knowing that you're going to get a pass rush. In the secondary, they still got Denzel Ward, who's a top-tier level corner. And, this defense was top 5 last year in pretty much every statistic. They were taking the ball away. They were limiting yards, limiting touchdowns, all that. But I just think the Browns season comes down to Deshaun Watson. Now, they do live in an extremely tough division in the AFC North, so obviously that's going to, they got no free or easy wins. But if Deshaun Watson can be at least average, like if he can give them, I don't know, Brock Purdy level play, this team could really make a deep run into the playoffs. But I just have huge doubts on Deshaun Watson. Other than that, though, this team is great. Pretty much top 10 in every other position room in the league. So that's why they are 14. I have faith in the surrounding cast. But it pretty much just comes down to Watson, man. That's about it. At number 13, we have a very young and up-and-coming team in the Chicago Bears. Now, to start with the Bears, they had a huge offseason, more specifically a huge draft, bringing in Caleb Williams and getting rid of Justin Fields, and drafting Rome Odunze. Having Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and they traded pennies on the dollar for Keenan Allen. It makes them from a one-man army with just DJ Moore last year to now an elite level receiving core where they go 3 deep. Cole Kmet's still a solid tight end. So, they got serious weapons on that end. The offensive line is still growing. Is it the best unit in the world? No. But it's definitely getting there. And I would say if they give them if the offensive line is average, maybe slightly below average, Caleb Williams can get away with it. Now, I'm a huge Caleb Williams believer and truther. I loved him coming out of college. I thought he was one of these, once every couple of years type of prospect up there with the Trevor Lawrences and the Andrew Lucks. So I'm huge on Caleb Williams, and I have faith in him to, bring this team up and elevate the offense and the people around him. But they're also giving him tools to make his life easier. Defensively, Montez Sweat was a huge addition, so having him for the whole season is only going to make the defense better. Jalen Johnson, the secondary is still very good. Jaquan Brisker and Jalen Johnson, great corner and safety tandem. So this defense is legit. They were a very great, I would say, top 10-ish unit for the second half of the season. Tremaine Edmonds, that deep linebacker core is still very good. Honestly, I don't want to be cliche and say it comes down to Caleb, because I know Caleb Williams is going to be good. The defense is going to do their thing. I know they're going to be good. They're going to keep growing because they are so young, and they're also consistent. Like Tremaine Edmonds isn't, he doesn't have these hit-or-miss games. Montez Sweat is consistently a good pass rusher. So I feel like the Bears have a higher floor than many people think. And it just really comes down to, can Caleb Williams and these new offensive weapons elevate the ceiling of the Bears? I would say a reasonable goal for them would be to win the division. I think they can definitely accomplish that. Are they the favorite to win the division? No. But I would be confident. I wouldn't be surprised if they did win the division. led by Caleb Williams in them. So, I could see the Bears huge transformation, but I could definitely see it turning out because they have these consistent players, at least defensively. I'm going to go with America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they did re-sign Dak Prescott. They re-signed CeeDee Lamb, so they got their big guys on offense coming back. And I expect them to be as good offensively as last year because they didn't really change much. They still got Brandon Cooks back there. Of course, Lamb, a top 3, 5-ish wide receiver. Prescott's going to give you the production, at least in the regular season. He's going to produce for you. He was in the MVP combo even last year. I believe 2022 he was still up there, so you don't have to worry about that. Running back wise, losing Tony Pollard is a big loss in the scheme of having to replace him with Zeke and Dalvin Cook. I would consider that to be a downgrade. But, this is a passing offense, so is the running back really a make or break? No, I wouldn't say so. The offensive line is still going to be pretty good. They arguably have two of the best guards in the league in Zach Martin and Tyler Smith. In my opinion, I would say Tyler Smith is the best run blocking offensive guard. So to have him, Zach Martin, it's going to be really good. They drafted the tackle out of I believe they drafted Tyler Guyton, but that I could be wrong. I know they drafted a tackle this year. So to have, the young guy come in, and I could see this offensive line not being a huge issue. Overall, the offense is very well-rounded. Jake Ferguson, too, as a tight end. The offense is going to be good. Defensively, Micah Parsons is going to do his thing. I could see the loss of Dan Quinn in that scheme being a big loss because Dan Quinn did a great job with the blitzes and the coverage. Things worked out really well. Secondary-wise, they get Trevon Diggs back, and whatever you think of him, Trevon Diggs is an above-average level corner at the minimum. He makes plays on the ball. He's a huge contributor for takeaways, along with Deron Bland. They both have similar styles in the sense that they take a lot of risks, they gamble a lot. And do they get burnt? Of course. But there's also times they get pick sixes like Deron Bland. I think he had 7 pick sixes last year, almost pretty close to the interception record. So Bland was great last year. I could see the defense doing their thing again with a slight downgrade this year, but pretty much the Cowboys didn't do much this year. They lost like minimal players here and there. I would say the loss of Stephon Gilmore because they let him walk. I don't agree with that. I think the combination of Bland, Diggs, and Gilmore would have been a lethal 3-cornerback duo. But, it is what it is. They didn't really do much to change on the defensive side of the ball. And Micah Parsons is going to give you Defensive Player of the Year performance. So I would say the Cowboys, do they have the highest floor? Every year they do have a high floor and a high ceiling. Their floor, they're gonna get at least 8 wins. That's the bare minimum this team is gonna get because of Prescott, Lamb, and Parsons, that big 3. So I would say their ceiling is probably the championship game. I'd feel comfortable with that. Just outside the top 10, I'm going to put the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Bengals this year, I think this is the year where they got to kind of show us, was 2021 a fluke? And more importantly, can Joe Burrow come back from injuries? Can Jamar Chase come back from being a little bit injury-riddled? Now, Chase, he didn't really practice, so it's going to take him at least a couple weeks to get that rust off. You can only do so much, so it'll take, I would say, 2 weeks max to get accumulated to that. T. Higgins is a little bit banged up. So, overall, the injury bug is going to bite them. Losing Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd is going to be noticeable, at least this year. So, it's pretty much a 3-man show with Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, and I don't know if that's enough to, really depend with no run game pretty much. So it's going to be a big ask. Joe Burrow's going to need to show out and become more, calling him a game manager sounds disrespectful, but, sooner or later you kind of hope that they can piece it together, at least injury-wise, or that they can make a few plays, get a deep run. They made the Super Bowl 3 years ago, and they made the AFC Championship in 22, I believe. The offensive line is going to be solid because they keep working on that constantly. So I have more faith in Chase and Burrow than I do Prescott and Lamb, which is one big reason why I have the Bengals over the Cowboys. On top of coaching, Zach Taylor, is he amazing? Is he some mastermind coming to playoffs? No, but he's a quality head coach. He knows what he's doing most of the time. Decent play caller. Defensively, Trey Hendrickson is going to, he's still an edge one in the league. Secondary wise is going to be improving, a little bit questionable. But, they were able to live just fine with Jesse Bates last year. You hope they can build upon that. And they do have one of the good defensive coordinators in the league, so that is going to help them out. Even if the talent isn't there, the coaching is going to be able to make up for it. You're hoping Miles Murphy can make a step up after his, rookie season. But I believe in this defense. It's going to be solid. And overall, I'm excited for the Bengals. Of course, their ceiling is the Super Bowl, but their floor is only as much as the injuries tell them. Because if you were to tell me week 8 that, or by the end of the season, that Chase only played 11 games or that Burrow only played 12 games, I wouldn't be shocked, because the players on the team, even Hendrickson, players on this team are just injury riddled. Call it bad luck, call it whatever. So I think this season just comes down to their health and how lucky they can get it. So yeah, I'm gonna put the Bengals at 11 right now. So at number 10, cracking the top 10, I'm going to put the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Packers are an extremely young team, which, puts them at one of these high floor, high ceiling, low floor type of teams, because, if they were to stink it up, it would be like, they're young, they're growing and whatnot. But I have faith in this offense, more specifically Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur has shown us that he is one of these top 5 game-changing level coaches that can be the difference between 6 and 9 wins or 7 and 11 wins. I think Matt LaFleur is that good of a coach. Jordan Love, albeit in an extremely short sample size, did play pretty good and did have his moments, especially in the playoffs against San Fran and against Dallas. Running back wise, swapping out Josh Jacobs for Aaron Jones, I would say that's a neutral level thing. Both running backs are on the back end, on the higher end of the age. So, I would view that as neutral. And receiver wise, they're still going to be pretty good, as receivers, because Christian Watson, you hope he comes back healthy. Jaden Reed. And they're just very deep when it comes to the wide receiver department between Dobbs, Reed, and Christian Watson, that you got to think one of those guys emerges into a Pro Bowl level receiver. So I'm expecting big things out of them. Their tight end room is one of the better in the league. They have a great two-man punch in the tight end room. Their offensive line, they have a great O-line coach and staffs, which is why they consistently have one of the better offensive lines in the league. Overall on offense, there's not really many weaknesses. I guess if you were to be picky, it would be the receiving core, but a very well-rounded offense. So I could definitely see that. Defensively, Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, and Rashawn Gary. That's the guy. Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, and Preston Smith are going to be huge. This D-line is going to stay elite. They got Lucas Van Ness up for another year, so you're hoping he can get some more playing time in. But the defensive line, you don't have to worry about it. Linebackers, can Quay Walker show you first-round level production? So far, he really hasn't. He's been more of a liability. You're hoping he can take a next step up. Secondary-wise, they brought in Xavier McKinney, a huge addition, because the safety room was a need for them last year. So getting Xavier McKinney, probably the best safety on the market this offseason, great addition for them. And they still got Jair Alexander, one of the premier corners in the league. I would say top 3, top 5 corner in the league. So I would say the Packers have a high floor because they really don't have too many pain-killing weaknesses. The coaching staff's great. The offense is pretty well-rounded. Their ceiling is pretty high because of this, because their young guys. Could Jordan Love continue his run of great excellence from the playoffs and last couple of games of the season into this season? Can Rashawn Gary keep up that Defensive Player of the Year production and the defensive line maintain one of the best reputations and one of the elite units in the league? I believe they can. They drafted a tackle in the draft, only helping that. So I'm big on the Packers. I could definitely see them making I definitely put them in the playoffs. I would say that's a pretty much guarantee. But they're right up there with the Lions when it comes to their division and competing for the NFC North title. They're right up there. Favorite team in the Houston Texans. Now, the reason the Texans are this high is because they literally have everything going for them, and there's no reason to think that they'll get worse after this offseason and after what they showed last season. CJ Stroud, even after being in the MVP conversation as a rookie, is huge, and he can only go up from here. Bringing in Stephon Diggs to an already elite group with Tank Dell and Nico Collins makes this offense extremely explosive. They brought in Joe Mixon, only making things better. So this offense, they were one of the top 5 units last year, and they're only going to keep it that way with Stroud giving you MVP level production, Nico, Tank Dell, and Diggs all being capable 1,000-yard receivers. Do I expect all three to get 1,000 yards? No, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities. So this offense is going to be great. They have probably the second or third best left tackle in the league in Laramie Tunsil. So the offensive line is going to do their thing. Defensively, Will Anderson came on late last year, showing you why he was this highly touted edge rusher prospect. So he's going to be pretty good. And who came in from Minnesota? Who came in? Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter came in from Minnesota, giving them a great 1-2 punch as an edge rusher. Derek Stingley, you hoping he can take. He was great last year. I would say definitely above average, but can he take that extra level step to get in the Denzel Ward, Jair Alexander level tier? That's to be determined. Secondary-wise, they still got Jalen Petrie, I believe is how you pronounce it. The defense is going to be good. Obviously, the offense is the strong suit in this team, but with a defensive coach like DeMeco Ryans, I'm expecting the defensive coaching to be able to make up a maybe lack of talent on that side of the ball. So overall, I think it comes down to stars on defense with Derek Stingley, Petrie, and Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter making up for maybe like a weak linebacker room, a weak cornerback too. So I could see the Texans. I mean, they made the divisional round last year, so I would say their ceiling is definitely Super Bowl. Ceiling is definitely their Super Bowl, and it's expected that they win their own division in the AFC South because they beat every team last year. They're a great matchup against every other AFC South team. Overall, I love the Houston Texans. They can match up with pretty much any team and win in any style of way. Number 8, we have the Miami Dolphins, and man, this team is electric offensively. The way McDaniel can just scheme up these crazy-ass concepts, and it seems like, like he's coaching against high school defensive coordinators because this offense is just so electric. There's so many aspects to it, and I really think McDaniel, even after a short tenure, has already shown you he's an elite-level head coach, but I wouldn't actually... Let me backtrack. I wouldn't say he's elite. He's very great, but can he come up clutch when it matters most later in the season when it comes to December and the playoffs? To back that up with Tua, because Tua has had a reputation and has been shown in the past to either be injured or be extremely poor when it comes to these December and colder weather games. That's why I think the only way the Dolphins do make a deep run is if they get the 1 seed. Even if they get the 2 seed, they might have to travel to Baltimore in January, Kansas City in January, or New York in January. So, they really need that number 1 seed. But if they do get that number 1 seed and they're able to play in warm Miami during the winter, that's a huge advantage to them. Now, as a skill group, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, the fastest wide receiver duo in the league, the most electric, the way Mike McDaniel just builds his whole scheme around these guys and can make them just seemingly so wide open is magical to see, which is why Tyreek Hill is, bare minimum top 2 receiver. He was voted the best player in the league by other players for a reason. Offensive line is average. It's all right. Teron Armstead gives you a lot, but they did lose Robert Hunt this year, so that's going to be a noticeable loss. But with this much outside zone and just trickery, end arounds, is that going to be like a huge weakness? It's definitely a weakness, but I think they'll be able to overcome it. A great running back room in Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, just being hyper efficient, damn near 5 yards, 6 yards a carry. This whole offense is just about efficiency and being electric. The only downside for them is they can't really, ground and pound. If they need a short yardage thing, they're going to be fancy. They can't really, grit and be tough about it. That kind of carries over to the defense because it's been known that you can kind of run the ball on these guys. You can get gritty. You can get physical with them, and they're going to give in. They're not going to stand up for it. Defensively, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb were both injured, so you're hoping at least one of those two guys are able to come back and continue their great level of production. Secondary, Jalen Ramsey is still an elite corner, even after all these years. So the cornerback room is going to be good. There are a lot of questions when it comes to, maybe the safeties or the linebackers. But, you kind of hope that they can piece it together. And they don't need a top 10 defense. They don't need one of these Pittsburgh Steeler level defenses because the offense is going to be so electric where even if the defense lets up 27, the offense will get 30. So I think that's the biggest thing with the defense. It's a lot of bend, don't break. And you're hoping they don't break too much. But honestly, this comes down to Tua and really the coaching staff late season because Tyreek Hill himself had a decline. He was on some crazy pace for the first half of the season. So there's a reason he didn't end with his expected 2.4 thousand yards by the end of the season because he did tail off at the end. The coaching staff tailed off. So I think that'll be the biggest question for the Dolphins. I would say their ceiling is the AFC Championship game. The only reason I said Super Bowl earlier, but that's only if they get the 1 seed. If they don't get the 1 seed, it could be a wild card like last year where they just got pounced in some cold weather. They got gritted. They can't defend the run. So I would say they're compared to the other top 10 teams, they definitely have the lowest floor. So I would be concerned with that. But it's just electric what they can do offensively, at least for the first couple months. 7, we have the former 1 seed from last season, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens, they did already play as I'm recording this, but that still doesn't really make that big of a difference. Ravens are a team where it's going to be, a Lamar show. They're hoping Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson can be a lethal two-man run game when it comes to the read option. And I guess the game plan for them is that the defense is going to cave in, and it's going to make Lamar's job as a passer much, much easier, which is certainly the plan, and it should work because Henry, even while he's getting older, he still has some juice in the tank. He's a ground and pound rusher. He can withstand these 20, 25 carry games. So I do believe that Henry is a good addition to this offense. He can run the scheme that they want. Given Henry's not the best shotgun runner, in his time in Tennessee, he was the best in I form under center. But I do still expect Henry to be pretty good. Receiver-wise, Zay Flowers, you're hoping can take some improvement. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are going to be a great tight end tandem. Isaiah Likely is another guy that is, you're hoping to improve. But outside of Zay Flowers, the receiver room is very sketchy. Nelson Aguilar as your wide receiver too is not pretty. It's going to need to be a Zay Flowers show. And I don't know if Zay Flowers is the type of guy where you can, count on him to get 80, 100 yards every week and make up for the lack of receivers outside of him. So it should be continued Baltimore offense where it's mostly ran through the tight ends and the run game. Defensively, they posted one of the best defenses last year, governed by Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. Now, losing Patrick Queen is going to be noticeable because he was good last year with Roquan. They matched very well, and you're hoping whoever fills in as that linebacker too, whether it's Trenton Smith or whoever it is, that they can maintain that consistency and overall just great run game presence, pass game presence that Patrick Queen gave. Defensive line, they have a good defensive line. Nothing too crazy, but definitely gets the job done. And secondary is huge. They have a great, well-rounded secondary. Kyle Hamilton making a case for one of the best safeties in the league. Marlon Humphrey is still giving you great production and great shutdown ability, even as he gets up there a little bit in age. So I'm not worried about this defense, even though they did lose a few coaches here and there. The defense is going to do their thing, and it's all about one man, number 0, Roquan Smith. Very reminiscent to Ray Lewis, being just a thudder and shutting down the middle of the field. Roquan Smith gives that, kind of presence where he's shooting the gaps in the run game while also kind of playing that mid-zone very well, allowing them to run in Tampa 2. They run a lot of man, a lot of disguises and blitzes. I really like this defense. It's super well-rounded, and it's also just tough. This team can win. That you would think their offensive scheme and defensive scheme is able to win in the cold. It's just whether or not Lamar Jackson can win in these clutch situations when it comes to not even like December, but mostly the playoffs. Jim Harbaugh is going to be good. He's a solid coach, definitely top 10, but he's going to do his thing. He's going to manage it very well. He's going to get the right guys in the building. So overall, the Ravens, they have a very high floor. They're not going to tank unless there's some injury. They're gonna make the playoffs at least. They definitely have a high floor. But I do see them taking a slight step backwards last year, especially with a lot of questions on the offensive line. So there's that. Power ranking, I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I'm higher on this team than I would say the consensus is. I would say most people have them top 10, but certainly not at 6. And my thing for this is the just absolutely absurdly explosive offense. Sean McVay is a mastermind. He's been doing this forever. He's proven that he's an elite level head coach, and he can get the best out of anyone of any draft pick, any skill level, because the scheme seems to work with anyone, and that's why I love it so much, because it's really like playoff proof. It can work in any weather against any defense. Now, talking about the players, Matthew Stafford has been performing at an MVP elite level for the past few seasons. He's also one of the more consistent and more durable quarterbacks in the league, and that's certainly a good bonus to have as a team. Kyron Williams came onto the scene last year, and he's really another gem that this team found and a workhorse that they're able to run through. And, I believe in Kyron Williams. Is he, top 5 back like a Saquon or CMC? No, but he's a reliable, trustworthy running back, and he's going to get you at least above average production, and that's all you can ask for. They have probably the best 1-2 wide receiver duo in the league in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Now, as I am recording this, Puka did just get injured, but, that's to be determined. When healthy, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are both 1,500-yard receivers. Now, it'll be, of course, we didn't see how they looked, only a few games how they looked together, of course, last year, and they still blended in beautiful. The one didn't dominate the other entirely, which is great to see. And even with Puka down, Cooper Kupp can still manage the offense on his own as the wide receiver 1, as we saw a couple of years ago in 2021 and 2022. So I'm not worried about the receiver corps, even if Puka does miss a few games. The offensive line is certainly improving. They have their late-round draft picks that they have faith in and that they are growing. They signed a few free agents, so I expect the offensive line to also be in the above-average tier of units. Defensively, losing Aaron Donald is, it's an obvious downgrade, and this defense is going to take a massive, massive hit for it. They did draft Jared Verse, the edge rusher out of Florida State, which should help, kind of get some of that sack production back. So that, it'll be interesting to see how they're able to bounce back just on a defensive line perspective without Aaron Donald. And if this coaching staff and the other guys can step up without, that huge gravity field that Aaron Donald does give them. Linebacker, why they got rid of Ernest Jones, which I really don't get, because he was arguably their best linebacker last year. It might have been a contract issue, it might have been a culture issue, but for whatever reasons, they let go of a quality linebacker, and I don't understand that. Secondary-wise, it's still a weaker secondary. They don't really have a true, number one shutdown. It's mostly about the scheme on that, so you're putting a lot of faith in, guys that aren't the most talented and, below average, especially when it comes time in the playoffs, and you got to be able to face against the San Frans and these Detroits with the high-powered, spread offenses. So I would be concerned about the secondary and pretty much the defense as a whole. You're pretty much relying on, Jared Verse and the coaching staff on the back end to make up for it. So, but, I have faith in Sean McVay. So, yeah, 6 may be a little bit high, but especially for their defensive issues. But this offense is just extremely consistent. The offensive floor is top 4 offensive unit in the league. That's their floor. It's an extremely safe, inconsistent group on that side of the ball. It's just defensively, can the coaches get together and can the young guys step it up? I think that's what it'll come down to for the Rams this season. I'm going to put the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles are one of the more well-rounded teams in the league. They, especially, just when it comes down to pretty much everything, they are very good in pretty much every aspect. Let's start with the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. He was a little bit dinged up last year, but he was still at least a top 10 production level quarterback last year, so that's at least his floor. And we know his ceiling is MVP level as he came second a couple of years ago. So, I believe in Jalen Hurts. He's going to give you at least production between the fourth best and seventh best quarterback this season. That's what you can expect. Receiver wise, they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, another elite wide receiver duo. A.J. Brown went berserk last year for a couple game stretch, single handedly putting the team on his back. So, A.J. Brown is one of those guys that can just take over a game and give defensive coordinators just nightmares about. So, I believe that makes a huge difference in why they're so high because, come playoff time or late season, A.J. Brown can go off for 150 yards. And, it wouldn't be a surprise. Devontae Smith is also a very capable 1,000-yard receiver, so I believe in him to do just as much, skill-wise and production-wise. These two guys, do they have their inconsistencies? Yeah, of course they do, but that's any team pretty much. I would say they're less consistent than the Rams, the team at number 6, but still the Eagles are very, very good. Dallas Goedert is still giving you somewhat good production. And then the offensive line, probably the best unit of this team. They go about 3 or 4 Pro Bowl level starters deep. Losing Jason Kelce is a massive loss, and it's definitely not going to be easy to replace him. But they still have Lane Johnson. They still got their other guys around. So, that offensive line is not going anywhere anytime soon. It's one of the main reasons why they're probably the best fourth down offense in the league with the tush push. So this offensive line is just an absolutely elite unit, and I could definitely see them dominating yet again as the best offensive line this year in football. Now, the big addition for this team was Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is one of the best running backs in the league, and, the Giants made a bad decision. The Eagles jumped on it. I think Saquon is going to work great in this offense, working with the check down game as a receiver, and working the inside zone game. Behind this juicy offensive line, it's going to just probably revitalize his career because this offensive line is 10 times better than anything he had with the Giants. I see this working flawlessly with Saquon Barkley, and this offense is just going to be very Shane Steichen-esque with the RPOs as usual, but now the defense has to respect the Saquon Barkley runs. Defensively, it's still a weak spot with Slay and with Slay back there, and overall the secondary has been their main issue for the past 2 years now. It's the main question has been, is the secondary good, or are they just a product of the pass rush making things harder for the offense? And that's another question coming into this year that they'll have to prove again. Can Darius Slay live up to himself? They brought back C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who had a good year with the Lions, had a few good moments with the Lions, had a good year with the Eagles a couple of years ago, so that should be a huge addition. He felt like they were missing a ball hawk and, a real thud maker last year. So I could definitely see CJ making a big difference for them. Linebacker is still weak. They're waiting on some of their young guys to take another step. Kelly Ringo, Nakobe Dean, especially Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis has struggled to, get consistent playing time and make a real impact on the field. But, this D-line is still going to be very good. They're great on depth. They go about six defensive line deep. So I think the reason I got the Eagles so high is because of their trench work with, probably the best offensive line and the deepest. They have the most depth of any defensive line in the league. So I could see that being the reason why they make a deep run, because if they just stick to it and they run the ball 35 times a game, then they get a lead on you. Once it's 10-0, that pass rush is going to get hungry, and it's going to make things a lot easier for them. So I always believe in the Eagles. Yeah, that's about it. I'm going to put the New York Jets now. Yes, I have the main reason I have them is everyone knows it. I have faith in Aaron Rodgers and this team gelling together. I feel like Zach Wilson, not only was he a god-awful quarterback, but it was just demoralizing in the locker room to have him there and to have that poor play. And I think just having Aaron Rodgers there is going to elevate the team, just from a morality and confidence standpoint. So I believe in Rodgers having that factor as well. Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, they still got the same guys as last year. They're pretty much running it back. They addressed the offensive line with guys like Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, and they drafted Olufashanu in the first round. So they do not have to worry about the tackle, certainly the tackle being an issue for them this year. So they addressed their biggest need on offense in both the quarterback, well, I guess it's injury, but both their biggest spots last year for weakness was quarterback and offensive line, which they addressed immediately pretty much. So, this Jets offense is now suddenly very well rounded. They got Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams as a wide receiver, who's a solid wide receiver too. Brees Hall is still a very good running back, certainly up there with, the top 10 guys. So I could see this offense, being explosive, being one of these, have a very consistent 24, 27 points week in and week out. And defensively, there's not much to say about them defensively other than Robert Saleh knows how to lead an elite defense. They have a top 2 cornerback in Sauce Gardner. Some may argue the best, but anyways, they have Sauce Gardner. They have, I can't remember his name, but the cornerback 2 is still very good, which just leads to a bunch of problems. Their secondary as a whole is just shut down, very, very elite. I think last year they ranked top 3 in pretty much every category. Even though they were constantly being on the field, they were gassed with a bunch of 3 and outs. Their offense wasn't really helping them when it came to energy and helping them with fielding. So I could see the defense also, being better in that aspect when it comes to stamina and being better come fourth quarter. That's a little nitpick that I think could be improved upon for them. The defensive line is going to be elite as usual. Jermaine Johnson, he's been growing, he's been improving, and Will McDonald, we'll get to see some real action from him this year. Quinnen Williams is a premier defensive tackle in this league, and this defensive line is just on par with Philadelphia as an elite unit. So I could definitely see this defense just being shut down as usual, top 2 in pretty much every stat, led by C.J. Mosley, who's still chugging it. He's getting a little bit up there, but he's still in, a premier linebacker 1. So I expect this defense to be top 2 nonetheless. At minimum, I would say this defense is going to be 6th, 7th in the league, overall. So the Jets, they were able to get 7 wins out of Zach Wilson. I'm pretty sure they can get at least 10, with a higher morality and a 10 times better throw of the football in Aaron Rodgers. And I believe in Aaron Rodgers to uplift them. I think the play thing is one thing, the big thing, but also, I'm big on the morality and the confidence thing because I think that really took a hit on them, certainly offensively, with the whole quarterback issue they had last year. We have another fan favorite team, and there's no reason not to be, and that's the Detroit Lions. The Lions are a team with a super creative offense, and I think their biggest move this season was being able to re-sign Ben Johnson miraculously. Now, it was pretty much, the speculation was that he was going to go to Washington or he was going to get $1 billion out of whatever team, and they were able to re-sign him, which is absolutely huge because they can run it back this year with the same core guys. They still got Jared Goff, who runs this offense beautifully. Is he Mahomes or is he Lamar? No, but he runs the offense and the play action scheme that they want beautifully, and that's all you can ask for as a coach. Sam Laporta put up one of the best tight end rookie seasons we've seen, in NFL history, and there's no reason to think he's going to get worse. So they'll have a top 5 tight end on them. Amon-Ra St. Brown, top 10-ish wide receiver, very safe, very consistent. I think that's the name of the game with the Lions. They have they have players with high potential and boom ability such as Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Jameson Williams, but they also have a lot of safe and consistent guys on a week-to-week basis such as Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. I think that gives them a nice blend where they can win scrappy, but they can also win in a shootout too. So I love this offense and just the way it's constructed. Offensive line is on par with Philadelphia, headlined by Penei Sewell, who is probably the best right tackle in the league right now. Not many good right tackles out there, but I would say Penei Sewell is the best right tackle out right now. So this offensive line is an absolute unit. The Thunder and Lightning duo of David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs has worked out much better than anyone has anticipated. And it just gives a really nice blend and, a little bit of everything with this offense where they can go ground and pound, they can go spread. Just gives great versatility on them overall as a whole. Defensively, they did have some issues last year, especially when it came to the defensive line, but they addressed those again. They went out and they got DJ Reader, great defensive tackle from Cincinnati, so he's definitely going to be an upgrade for them. Aiden Hutchinson is only improving. He took a big jump last year, especially when it came to sack production. He was finally able to finish those plays, so Aiden Hutchinson is still going to be a great edge one that a team is going to be happy for. Secondary-wise, they got Kevin Joseph back there, great growing safety, and Brian Branch, a great nickel that they love to move around. So, there's no reason the safety room, it was very solid last year, and I think it's only going to get better this year. The linebacker room last year wasn't really that good, but I think they can overlook, especially with Brian Branch being in the slot and playing those mid zones also. I think that's able to overshadow, maybe poor linebacker play. So I could definitely see, the defense being able to hide and get away with things. And also, the culture behind this team and the grit in the locker room is, second to none. It's up there with Pittsburgh at this point, honestly. The way Dan Campbell has these guys playing and the confidence they have going, it's up there with the best of them. And I seriously think they can win every week, and I think they have a shot to beat pretty much anybody in this league. With their just versatility and just ways to beat you in so many ways. Their run defense is still solid. Their pass defense is solid. They're not bad. They're not weak at anything. And they can play a variety of methods and games to be able to win. And that's why I love the Detroit Lions. Number 2, I'm going to put the Super Bowl back-to-back defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this team, of course, let's start with the obvious, and they have the best quarterback in the league, the MVP candidate year in and year out, Patrick Mahomes. And with anything like Mahomes, you're guaranteed at least 9 wins and Super Bowl contention with them. So, that's bare minimum to start with. And the rest of this team, Travis Kelce, is he getting up there with age? Yeah, he is. But he's still a very, very good tight end, top 5 at the bare minimum with them. So Kelce is still going to give them good production. And they went out. Last year they had some major wide receiver issues. Yes, Rashee Rice came on late in the season. But other than that, they pretty much had no wide receiver, with Marquez Valdes-Scantling not working out, Sky Moore not working out. So they went out and they addressed those issues. They did a great job doing that. They brought in Hollywood Brown and they brought in Xavier Worthy, 2 guys that, that match the style of play that the Chiefs want to run, which is just speed. And I think they do it very well with the deep shot and slot ability, both those guys in Worthy and Hollywood Brown. Mix it in with Rashee Rice having a great end of rookie season last year. There's no reason why he can't improve upon that. Kelce and Mahomes automatically is just going to, boost this team tremendously, because that's an explosive quarterback to tight end duo up there with Brady and Gronk. So that alone is going to give them bonus points. They have one of the best offensive-minded coaches in the league in Andy Reid, who just seems to always be one step ahead when it comes to matching up against defenses, getting guys open in creative ways, and just seemingly getting guys wide open out of thin air. So you can't really shit on them for that. And the offensive line is another elite unit headlined by Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey. They've had their controversies in the past, especially tackles, been a little bit iffy. But overall, this offensive line is very high caliber. And there's no reason to think that they're going to regress or get old. So the offensive line is going to be very, very good. And I just believe in, Patrick Mahomes is going to make them very good. Mahomes, Reed, and Kelce are going to be the headliners yet again. Defensively, they pretty much ran it back. Although the big loss is L'Jarius Sneed, they lost him to Tennessee, which is going to be a noticeable loss. But they have Trent McDuffie, who was a huge headliner last year, and I think they have trust in him to be a CB1 shutdown corner where they can just put him on an island. And it'll be interesting to see him in that role and how they use him without, a 1-2 punch of Sneed and McDuffie. They still have Chris Jones there, Defensive Player of the Year candidate year in and year out. So that's going to give them big numbers. George Karlaftis is continuing to grow. They have a great linebacker room. Overall, this defense and coached by Scarnecchia was an absurdly elite defense last year. I think they only let up 11 points per game last year in the playoffs. Just absurd numbers for the defense. And they're going to keep it back. They didn't lose too many pieces outside of Snead. So I expect big things out of this defense. But they just don't have the studs and the stars that the number one team does. My preseason ranking for the best team in football is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I'm going to start off by saying this team is headlined by, I think, the best offensive mind and the best overall head coach in the league in Kyle Shanahan. The way this scheme just seems to work with anybody of any skill, you got, and it just makes things so effortless with the creativity of the motions, the runs. It's just great to see, and they probably have one or two bad games all year, but it's never, ever late in the season. They're great playoffs. They can win in the cold. They can win it, in the warmer weather. I'm just in awe of this offense. I'm talking about the players. Brock Purdy, shit on him as much as you want. Is he a top 10 quarterback? No. But he runs this offense greatly, 10 times better than Jimmy Garoppolo ever did. He runs it great, and he still makes some highlight plays of his own. He's not a complete game manager. He's not a complete bum. He's very good. He does exactly what he's, asked to do in that offense. They have the best running back in football, Christian McCaffrey, who's just been ridiculous since he's joined the Niners. I swear to God, when watching him, it feels like he's getting 9 yards a carry because it's just so effortless what he's able to do in this offense. They still have the best left tackle in the league in Trent Williams. And while the offensive line over as a, starting five is not superb and, not super amazing, they have Trent Williams, and they can just run outside zone to his side every single play and get away with it because he's just a beast at that tackle position. They were able to bring back Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel still there, and they drafted Ricky Pearsall, making already an Avengers-level receiving core with George Kittle at tight end, of course. An Avengers-level receiving core even better with the addition of Ricky Pearsall, so there's no reason to see any regression from this group as a whole. They blend in together so well. They got Ayuk, the great route runner in the deep shot. They got Deebo Samuel, the creative, little puzzle piece that they can put everywhere, and run after catch. Kittle, phenomenal blocker, run after catch. I think they just blend together so beautifully on offense, and it's just so effortless because it's very hard to stop these guys. They work together so well. The offense, scheme makes them pretty much unstoppable. And defensively, the Niners are always going to produce a top defense because of their stars. They have still the best linebacker in football in Fred Warner, who pretty much shuts out the whole middle of the field. That's a ridiculous advantage that they have with him. So Fred Warner is going to keep doing his thing, of course. They have Nick Bosa. And Nick Bosa last year, Defensive Player of the Year caliber player. He's going to repeat the same thing this year, so I expect that out of him. In that, although they did lose Eric Armstead, I think they got rid of Javon Kinlaw. I still think the defensive line can still produce, can still scheme up things. Plus, Nick Bosa is going to do most of the damage himself, so you have to kind of respect it in that aspect. Linebackers, Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner, the best linebacker duo in the league yet again. They're going to kill it. They're going to do their thing. They're going to shut out the middle of the field. And secondary-wise, the secondary is still going to be pretty good. They still got Charvarius Ward. Charvarius Ward is still a shutdown cornerback number one type of player, so I believe that he can really, hold it down over there. The safeties are still, they're good. They're nothing too crazy, no star studs. But I think the biggest thing, the difference between the 49ers and the Chiefs is just the stars and top-level players. You can make an argument that 49ers have the best linebacker, edge rusher, offensive tackle, and running back and head coach in the league. Debo's no slouch, top 10, 2 top 15 receivers. It's just a lot of stars and a lot of studs on this team. It's very Avengers level, and I just, don't see any major glaring weakness with the 49ers. I, I would say their floor is conference championship game, and their ceiling is Super Bowl champion. So, that's the 49ers for you, and that's overall my preseason power rankings. I know the recording and upload is going to suck, but these are my preseason upload rankings, and week 1 didn't really affect it at all. So, yeah, hope you enjoy.